Hello, this is Donna Marie, and welcome to the Best Life of Wellbeing podcast. Today's whole life conversation is with Sonia Benson. Sonia is a sexologist, which is why I wanted to talk to her initially, but I've learned so much more about Sonia. Sonia is also a widow, and so this conversation will be about sex, intimacy, pleasure, self care, but it will also focus on the other aspect of self care, grief, end of life planning, and the importance of normalizing death conversation and caring for your future self. Yes, yes.
Yes.
Welcome,
Yes.
welcome, Sonia Benson.
Thank you. Thank you. So excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so happy you're here. So I've seen a couple titles. I didn't do a whole lot of pre-work here because I like these conversations to be organic and
Yes.
just
Nice
intimate, an opportunity for me to get to know you better and for the audience to get to know you better. But I have seen a couple titles. So here you have certified sexologist. I've seen sex educator and intimacy coach, sacred sexologist.
Yes. Yes.
And, it doesn't matter the title. I don't really know what any of that means.
Right.
That's why I have you here today. I want to know what a sexologist does, how you became a sexologist, and all that.
Yes. Well, so let's see. Just for the simplest definition, a sexologist is just someone who studies human sexuality.
Okay.
So someone who studies human sexuality, and we have so many people in that field, and that fit that description. And people do different things with it. Some people will then go on to be a sex educator. Some folks will go on to be a counselor or a coach. Some folks become therapists and help deal with, let's say, sexual trauma or different things. So it really sexologist is the study of.
Okay.
And then you have the people that fall up under that in terms of what they actually do with that. I myself do a lot of education because I like to, I'm all about liberating women in the arena of sex. So all about the liberation of, I was going to say the liberation of the clitoris.
Yes, liberation of the clit. Okay.
Yes. And then intimacy coaches, because it's not just about sex, it's learning how to connect. It's, because we can go through all of the acts and still not have that be anything. It could possibly still not be all that you desire. Because the other part is us learning how to be vulnerable enough to be intimate with one another and connected and open and sharing and that sort of thing. So,
and that happens way before sex even. Hopefully.
Happens way before sex. Yeah, the quality of sex has more to do with the quality of the relationship.
So on that note, you got in your background grownazzwomenshyt, certified sexologist. Can you just share a bit more with the audience? Tell us who you are, introduce yourself, and share a bit of your background.
Got it.
Sexologist, because I know
yes, ma'am. So I am I was about to say it's funny because as I look at all the different things, I'm like, okay, you do this, we do this, we do this, we do this. So like I usually try to have it come down to one phrase, and it's way more than to fit into that one phrase. So as you mentioned, grownazzwomenshyt, I am a co-host of a podcast called grownazzwomenshyt, where we normalize conversations about sex, money, relationships, and self-care. So we are all about having those conversations that we would normally sweep up under the rug, or historically we're like hush hush about, not really wanting to talk about it, but because of not talking about it, we're suffering. And so we have an opportunity to start pulling some of that stuff from under the rug and talking amongst ourselves, but also to future generations, so that we are having, so that they're prepared for certain things that are gonna happen anyway. Things that happen to me are going to happen to the next woman, are going to happen to women, down the line, and we get to have those conversations. So, so we love, having. We love that we focus on sex, money, sex and money are two big things that we don't really like to talk about. So we or at least talk about the hard stuff.
Right,
So
right,
yep.
right. Exactly.
So
We can
yeah,
glorify the sex experience and, and celebrate when we have money. And then when we don't, or if we realize we are not good managers of the money, we do want to, that's a shameful topic.
it's a there you go. There's shame there, or at least there's somehow this inherited shame that we, even when some folks don't experience shame around it, it's like it's children that are like, okay, they start exploring and discovering who they are sexually, or discovering that they have their bodies, and they get shamed out of that.
Yeah.
They get yeah. So we're all about actually helping us to move out from under the shame so we can have the conversations
I think that's
and
really
we can
beautiful.
expand.
Yeah, that's really beautiful to change the narrative. I love it.
Yes, that's one of our biggest aims. I'm also a healer, so I do healing work with folks. I have people that come, usually women, sit in my living room, cry about wherever they are and whatever is happening for them in their world. Doesn't always mean tears, but often a lot of times it does. And I kind of see myself as a spiritual midwife. I like that person is usually going through some type of transition,
Mhm.
and I am the midwife that helps you give birth to that next aspect of yourself. So it's like moving from point A to point B. And then often we think, well, when you're going through that transition, you just get to tough it out and do it, just make it happen. And often it's supportive to have somebody hold your hand and support you to the other side.
Yeah.
So I'm a Reiki practitioner. I do light work. Where I actually do and I'm a shamanic Reiki practitioner, actually. So I do a lot of work on another plane while I'm working with the person that's on the table. And so that's a whole nother world that I work with.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the title on there, but I'm also a promoter of pleasure. So to me, one of the biggest things is just teaching people how to be good receivers so that we can start enjoying this life and moving out of the survival mode.
So let's talk a bit about the good receivers. That's the last thing you said, and it sticks out to me
Mm-hmm.
because women are such great givers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And not just women, but most of us women, we are
Mm-hmm.
the moms, we are the nurses, the
Right.
chauffeurs, we clean, we cook, we manage it all. And just like you started the conversation, I do so many things. Many of us wear so many hats.
Right. We
and
do.
and getting that balance, or having a clear picture of who I am in all of that, is sometimes really, really difficult, because you easily can lose yourself, the core of who you are, in being the mom, the wife, the professional, the whatever. And so how do you help women with the receiving part?
Well, one, even recognizing the imbalance, or recognizing that you um starting to tap in and tune into yourself, and recognizing how you're really feeling, like recognizing that there isn't dissatisfaction,
Yeah.
recognizing that there is a desire for more, and also teaching how to nurture, like, 'cause this is in teaching self-care,
Yeah.
because or how to self-nurture, because that's not something that we're taught in this culture. We're taught how to focus out and to help other people. You're not taught how to, okay, let me take the time for myself, let me luxuriate, let me find, like, let me take a long hot bubble bath without guilt.
Yeah.
Often a lot of women are taught, we're taught guilt in this culture, and it often comes from, it's a big overarching, almost cultural conversation, and our mothers are like, they are guilty when they do stuff, and then we learn how to be guilty for taking care of ourselves, and it's like everybody else needs you except for
Mhm.
you. But I what is the comedian Cat Williams says, you gotta take care of your star player. And so oftentimes that's not happening. So we're, in a lot of ways suffering, and even in that arena. And then angry because you want somebody else to give it to you, but
Right.
you're not giving it to yourself. So we've
Yeah.
got to learn that for ourselves first. Like that charity starts at home, love starts at home.
And there's nothing outside of yourself. And so if you are waiting for someone to save you, to to provide for you, I remember when my son was maybe 19 and we were preparing for Christmas. And Christmas is not one of my favorite holidays, but my family loves Christmas. So I'm doing all this on this one Christmas, just trying to be over the top to make everybody else happy. And, talking to my kids, like, will you help me? And my son stopped me. He's like, Mom, all of your ideas and all of your visioning, it's in your head. The only way we can help you is if you share the vision with us.
Okay.
Like,
Wow.
man,
Really?
you are so wise. Thank you so much. Because
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
struggling trying to get it all together, and I don't have to struggle if I know how to ask for help, to share my vision, to, as you stated, when we're feeling something, express what you're feeling, and not in an angry but a healthy way. That's another
Mm-hmm.
thing to learn. Some of us don't know how to express what we're feeling in a healthy way. I'm sure you
Right.
help people with that a lot.
Yes. Yeah. About how to learning how to communicate, and learning how to even just get in touch with your feelings in the first place. Like, sometimes, because we're not accustomed to communicating our feelings, it takes some learning to actually, one, excavate them so that we know what they are, acknowledge what they are, and be able to say, "This, I'm feeling this, or I'm feeling that, or this is what this is what's happening for me."
Yeah.
Because that's a place that muscle is very weak, oftentimes.
So, with your shamanic work, so I struggle with knowing what shamans really do. And so, again, like sexology, there are different layers and different types of work. So for you, what is what type of shamanic work, or what does it mean even to be a healer?
Got it. Okay, so for one, just for what it means to be a healer, um, a healer. I feel like I stand in the space, or for transformation, whatever that might look like, and oftentimes transformation can be something as simple as changing your mindset. So it can be having this perspective and being able to have a different perspective that actually changes your viewpoint, which can shift you so that you're in a different come from with respect to your life. But that would be very big, because then you would approach things very differently. So, not that that's the only way, but I support people with all four levels of their being. We're looking at spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and your physical body. And I think when we think about healing, we're thinking about your physical well-being, but it's not just that. For some folks, we're in turmoil emotionally, or unwell emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. So some of what I'm doing is supporting a client with taking a look at where they are and how either well or unwell they are, and how to plug back in, because I believe that your wellness really comes from within.
Yeah.
It comes from your spirit, your inner being, but we're often unplugged from that.
Yeah.
We often are so busy out here with this, and this, and learning how to get still enough to cultivate your inner being so that you can tap back into your energy source. So I believe well-being has more to do with being out of alignment, as opposed to it being something that is like a permanent state. So I support people with kind of getting back into alignment with themselves.
Okay.
Like, where are you off? Where are you kind of not connected, not listening, not plugged in? So now, from the shamanic standpoint, I've not had any formal training as a shaman, but a lot of times some of us recognize that it's all kind of built in. This is something that you were born with. It's something that I came with. It was something that I discovered. And so as I was doing a healing session, actually with one of my clients, and I was doing this work, she's on my table, and in the moment, she was in so much pain that she started screaming out loud during the session. And when I came out of the session, I heard Spirit said, "That's because you're a shaman." And I was like, oh. So I just received that. And so I'm in the relationship that I have with my inner self and my spiritual self. I'm very open, and I listen, and I trust.
Yeah.
So sometimes, I have my human self that's like, man, this ain't even real. What are you talking about? But I see the results. And I've had clients, family members show up during the session, and I didn't know I could do that. Like, I didn't know it initially. It's kind of like being present to things that are happening that I don't quite understand, and then allowing spirit to teach me about
That is
it.
very deep. And it's deep also because, like you said, you just tapped into that inner guidance and learned about who you are. You did not have formal training. You just
No.
surrendered to your inner guidance, and it helped to get you on the path that you should be on.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of the work I do as a death doula,
Mm-hmm.
helping people to come to terms with their end of life, because in many cases we are on autopilot. We are functioning based on what we have learned from our parents, our environment. We have no idea what we truly believe about ourselves because
Right.
we never, we're socialized to think certain ways, and in many ways we're just brainwashed, really.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that's very great work that you're doing. It does sound
Thank
a
you.
little scary because you do have to be trusting. You do have to recognize that in the spiritual realm where you're going, it's a place where you're being guided. It's not a place
Yes.
where you have the control.
Right. And well, that's the thing. And I think the biggest thing is not having control and having to trust. And it can be scary because we are so often wanting to control.
Yeah. So can you share a bit about, or share a bit to help people who recognize that they are totally, there's no alignment with spirit, that they are, are not happy with the way they've been living their life because they know they're off balance, and they know that what they have learned in the past is influencing how they live today, and they know it's wrong. They know they're on the wrong path. What steps would you offer to help a person to connect with their internal guidance or their internal voice?
Well, I would say two big tools that I would actually recommend that they start using. One is journaling. Journaling helps you by allowing you to start hearing your voice. So, and I would say journaling for it doesn't have to be for a very long time. It's not like you have to sit down and write for hours, but I would recommend that it be probably a little longer than 5 minutes, because then you start allowing yourself to, the first things you're writing are probably just what's on the surface, or you cracking the surface. It's kind of like you writing what you think you should be writing.
Yeah.
And then after a while, you'll start writing and noticing that you're saying stuff that you did not, that you may start discovering stuff that you didn't know. So and I think that having this even as a daily practice, we're not listening to our voices.
Right.
We're often seeking for guidance outside of us. So one, I would say journaling. Two, I would recommend meditation. Um, and um, And I know for people that's a huge subject, and it's like, how do I do that? And there's so much to actually learning how to meditate and do it successfully. And oh, I can't stop my mind from racing. But I would venture as far as saying just learning how to stop, like hit the pause button, even if it's for 2 to 5 minutes, sitting down and just being.
Yeah.
All of the stuff can be going on. The mind could be racing. All of that, sit and try to find a way to be still and give yourself those spaces of stillness. Often what I sometimes use to help me to, if I want to cultivate a certain energy while I'm being still, is to play like music at a very, very, very slow tempo that slows you down. Sometimes gospel will do it.
Mm-hmm.
Or some other song. I know one that I really love using is The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face. Now, I know that's a relationship song, but when I listen to it, it slows. I slow my breathing with it, and I just try to allow myself to almost sink into the moment.
Yeah.
Because we're often off to the very next moment. So allowing yourself to be here right now. There's nowhere to go. So that I can start being with myself. That allows us, I believe, to start at least learning how to hear yourself.
Yeah.
And the third thing I would say is learning to ask yourself questions. So often I'm searching for information and guidance out there.
Yeah.
To me, asking the questions is prayer. It's, Lord, how do I deal with this? What should I do with that? I even ask, okay, Lord, what should we eat right now? What should I, like, oh, I'm hungry. What should I eat right now? And often will be like guided to, oh, go over here and eat that. Like, starting to ask for the answers from inside and expect them to start coming in whatever form they come. For some of us, we hear it and we'll hear, oh, you should do this. Some of us, we feel it or we get a very strong sense of something. And sometimes the answer appears from outside of you. And a lot of actually that developing the relationship with the inside, that is the feminine.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we don't recognize in this culture is that we are out of balance and we are often in our masculine energy. The masculine isn't, and we're not talking about the being feminine, like wearing skirts, and masculine, being masculine. But it's actually, we have both aspects. We have the feminine, we have the masculine. The masculine is your ability to act and do. Is to engage with the outer world. It's like how to, pick up this glass, grab the phone, make a phone call. That's all action, and it's all of the engagement with the physical world. The feminine is the relationship and engagement with the internal world. And so a lot of us are not doing that part. So you're out of balance because the feminine is supposed to inform the masculine.
Yeah.
The feminine says, okay, take this action. Often we're taking action with no internal guidance. And we're taking action that's based on your logic, which is again another part of your masculine.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, you are just processing old information and logically coming up with the next step. But the feminine will often have you do stuff that sounds bizarre. Like that makes no sense. I don't know why I would do that because I don't see getting a positive answer from that. However, that is the exact answer that you need to take.
Yeah.
So the feminine sees something a lot. Your logic is limited. It only knows it only knows the past. That's all it knows. Your feminine is tapped into all knowing.
Yeah.
It's tapped into awareness that is way bigger than your limited logical self.
Yeah.
And so you have the opportunity to tap into a knowledge or a knowingness that is not something that you have, I don't know, you have access to it, but it's a different type of access.
Yeah. It's
So,
more,
yeah.
it's intuitive, or it's, it's really a spiritual energy. And I would say feminine energy is more trusting, and it is, so you're able to tap into spirit with your feminine energy. I'm looking at the time, and I certainly don't want to end this conversation without talking about the role of a sexologist. Like, so I got a sneak a peek at kind of some of the work you did at a recent bridal shower, or the work you do.
Yes.
And I tell you, every woman in that room was really impressed, and they weren't impressed. They were impressed because it was a shower that was done to educate, to empower, to uplift, to liberate. And it was done in a very, very intimate way, but everybody felt comfortable. Nobody was ashamed. Everyone was open and receiving, and all eyes were on the penis.
Right. Yeah. So I really enjoy doing that. So it's so much fun, and it always is fun for me. I love, 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 love teaching and empowering around sex. And I think that as you mentioned, folks not experiencing the shame, I have more women than not come to me after I've done some type of talk and say, you know what, I just feel comfortable talking to you about sex because you don't make it feel dirty.
Yeah.
So for a lot of folks, I remove that energy, or that's not present there for them. And so they feel a lot more comfortable with being open and being able to talk about it and kind of, again, bring it from out of the dark. But for me, I am sex positive, very much come from a standpoint that sex is very natural. And I believe that it gets to be treated as natural. And so we get to so for me, that the shame is not included in my conversation about it. It's not, and I also feel like I go places that allow people to be comfortable with it, because it is possible for you to go in a conversation and take it to a place that would have people feeling uncomfortable. We have we have the ability to talk about sex from a raunchy standpoint, and from a way that feels a little like, okay, the words that you are using are not empowering. So I like to talk about it in such a way that it's just like, something we can talk about over dinner. This is not not what would this monster that we put in the closet. It is not the monster that we're making it out to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed that. And your friend Sarah came up to me afterwards and she said that was amazing. I baby step you there. And so I am being very mindful of the energy that's present in the room and how far I can take the energy so that people feel okay.
Yeah.
I like to create a safe environment when it comes to talking about sex.
Good.
Because it's very possible for people to be triggered.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So then on that note, how would a sexologist session go? Like, do you have one-on-one sessions with people or sessions with couples as well?
I do.
And so, I mean, I guess, all of those sessions vary, but I don't know if I want to ask these questions, but you tell me.
Yeah, no, well, like ask whatever you feel comfortable asking.
If you're dealing with someone who has had sexual trauma, and how would you start how would the person say, oh, look, I've had some trauma? Sometimes you got to dig stuff out of people. They don't come to you transparent, and they want to talk about sex, but they may not tell you, and they may not know.
Right. That's true. Yeah. So first, I just want to say, with respect to trauma, I am not a licensed therapist. And so if I do have somebody that has a trauma, I do refer them to a licensed person who is able to deal with trauma. So I'm trauma informed, and I can certainly support somebody when I recognize that there is trauma. However, I'm very, very careful, because sometimes you can do extra harm by having somebody relive trauma.
Yeah.
So when I'm not trying to almost dig your trauma up and have you now experiencing it over again in this moment, renewed. So yeah, usually that's when I consult with somebody that's a therapist, that I can say, okay, so I need you to talk to this person so we can handle that. Most of what I'm dealing with is people that not necessarily it's about trauma, but just a lack of awareness about sex.
Yeah.
Like I've taught, like the class that like what we did at the bridal shower, I've taught how to have, or how to have fellatio with your husband or with your partner. How to, so for some of us, women are learning, okay, you know what? I want to learn how to have fellatio, or how to suck a penis. And
some people don't know the words fellatio.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah, I usually use the proper term, but then I was like, let me just say that it's for sucking a penis. And though there's intimidation, because it's like, I don't know all of what I'm doing. Nobody's told me how to do this. And yeah, you might have seen on Girls Trip use a grapefruit, but I mean, still, even with that, do you really feel like you know what you're doing?
Right.
So what I do often is teach. This is the different parts of a penis. This is the part that actually is sensitive. This is the part that's you may want to focus on. These are some of the techniques that you may want to do to actually get the results that you want. This is some of the ways that you can support your partner with experiencing pleasure with your mouth and using your hands. And so breaking that down so that so often we're in there fumbling around just trying to figure it out. And when you're feeling self-conscious and uncomfortable, and I don't know what I'm doing, that awkwardness can often show up in the experience. Like it's clear that somehow this is not going well. And it also will cause us to avoid wanting to do it. And in addition, beyond the physical aspect of actually giving fellatio, giving head, there's the mental block. Because in our culture, some of us grew up in households that were very much like, you don't do that. Good girls don't do that.
Right.
You stay far away from that. That is so now you have the mental block that putting a penis in your mouth is nasty. And so even if your partner now says they want it, you decide I am gonna do that. There's still, you could be in the midst of doing it and be experiencing, this is gross. This is gross. This is gross. I shouldn't be doing this. This is gross. What do we think the outcome is going to be for that?
It's going to be gross.
or it's not, you're maybe not going to get pleasure. He may receive some or maybe not much pleasure. And so I'm often working with women, not just about how to physically learn how to do it, but also how to get over your mental resistance to doing that. And to get to a place where it's like, you see this as a sex positive, you see this as a positive thing.
Yeah.
As something that you could possibly enjoy. I really want to work. I talk a lot to women about not doing stuff in the bedroom that would cause you harm. And I mean, harm, that could be emotional and mental harm as well. Because you can do stuff that you flash back to for months. And you're like, I can't believe I did that. Like, I can't believe. And then you are flashing back and now you are feeling almost like you've damaged yourself from an emotional standpoint.
Yeah.
But instead, I want to support you with education so that you can feel confident and then start to enjoy it and say, oh, wow, I had the best time, pleasuring my husband orally or my boyfriend. So just learning how to get past whatever resistance it is, whether it's emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, so that you can enjoy sex.
I'm sure you work with people, teaching them also how to pleasure themselves.
Yes, I do. Yep. And that's a really big soapbox for me. I am all about learning how to self-pleasure and self-love because this is my body. My body. And guess what? It has all the same nerve receptors and the same pleasure sensors that it has with me being the only person being in the room. And so I like to tell women often, so the whole resistance to masturbation, because that's also a learned thing that, women shouldn't touch themselves or we shouldn't use toys or whatever it is. I'm like, it's like having a banquet that you have access to that's full of all of your favorite foods, but you don't feel like you can eat any of them unless somebody is here to give you permission to make a plate.
Wow.
Like you can be having the same fun by yourself. Now, it's solo sex is very different from couple sex. And for some folks, there's certain things that you love about being with another person. And though you can also find things that you can enjoy and love about being with your own body. And enjoying your own body. And I would even go as far as to say that it's necessary for you to learn, or it's important that you learn a lot about your own body before trying to have couple sex so that you can communicate what your needs are and how your body works in a couple relationship. Often we put a lot of pressure on the other person to figure out our bodies when we have not figured them out ourselves. Because I like to communicate or like to make sure my clients understand that sex is vulnerable for men and women. And I think sometimes women forget that.
Yeah.
So there's this idea that I should be able to criticize and say whatever comes out of my mouth and he should be able to take it. And that's not fair.
Right.
And it's not okay because men hurt as well. And so to say something very mean about they're wanting to do well in the bedroom too. So to say something that is very critical, that is mean, and just because you have an attitude about something, it's not okay, especially if we're talking about being in a relationship with somebody that you're caring about their feelings.
Yeah.
And so learning how to recognize he wants to do well, and you get to support him in doing well by communicating what you enjoy so that he knows how to do more of that. That's also why I also teach that so we get to stay away from the whole faking an orgasm, because that's similar to having somebody serve you a plate of food that you absolutely hate, or maybe not hate, but it's not the best. Like, it's like, okay, it's okay, but can I go without this plate of food? Yes.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is the best steak I've ever had in my fucking life. Like, that's not I'm sorry, I hope that was okay.
No,
I
it's
know we
fine.
curse we curse on our show. So that's the best, this is the best plate of food. And so you're giving misleading information
Yeah.
that now has men are very much like, okay, that works. I'm gonna do that again.
Right.
I'm gonna do that again. So now you're teaching that that's what you need to do. That right there, that was awesome. You need to continue doing that. And that actually gets results, and it does.
As you were talking about faking an orgasm, I was just thinking about the intimacy part of relationships. And so if you are allowing your representative to show up to please someone else, oh, that was great, oh, whatever, you are setting yourself up, because like you said, you're training the other person how to talk to you, how to treat you, how to whatever it is. And then at some point, you're going to really resent the partner,
Exactly.
because you've created it. And so we got to be so cognizant of what we are creating. We are co-creators. And
Yes.
what we're creating, once it explodes on us, we don't want to look at ourselves. And so to avoid having to look at yourself down the road when it doesn't go the way you want it to
Right.
go, it's really important. And it's not easy, but it's really, like you said, to be able to tap into what you're feeling, and be honest about that, and to communicate that, because it really helps everybody involved. Even if
Yeah.
you
And
are faking it, just say, yeah, I'm faking it, or whatever. Be real. It's so
yeah.
important.
But who moans when you eat a bite of food and it's nasty? Who does that?
Right. Who does that?
So yeah, so it's not helping. I know we think that it's helping because somehow we are helping his ego to feel like he's doing a great job. But one, when I talked earlier about being a good receiver, we're not being receivers in that moment. Like, you
Right.
are actually not um setting up the scenario so that you experience pleasure.
Yeah.
You're actually saying that I'm willing to have this not be a pleasurable experience for myself, as long as you're happy.
Yeah. You're not even really being a giver in that moment.
No, you're not.
You're really, the only word that comes to mind is martyr. Like, you're allowing, death is another word that comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you are literally in that moment not standing up, advocating, caring at all about yourself. You're just being
Or the other person.
yeah, or the other person. Wow.
Or
Yeah.
the other person. Yeah, the intimacy is not there. The connection is not there. I know we think you can think all you want that somehow being misleading and lying in relationship that is actually bringing you closer. It is not. You're walling yourself off, and you're not allowing the person in. They don't know the truth about you and what you're experiencing and how you feel. And so that leads to disconnected relationships. You're creating disconnection.
Yeah.
So now, if there's a challenge where you feel that you don't feel safe enough to be honest in your relationship, then that's a place to start. How do you create then the safety in this relationship such that you can actually communicate?
Yeah.
But lying and being deceptive or misleading or withholding in a relationship, this is going to lead to disconnection.
Yeah.
And it's not going to go in the direction of what you believe that you're taking this relationship. It's not allowing it to grow. It's actually, you're putting a huge wall up between you and your partner.
And I'm a firm believer that how you show up anywhere is how you are everywhere. And so if you are faking or cutting the other person off, you're cutting yourself off, and you're doing that in other areas of your life as well. There's a pattern there.
Right, exactly. Of smiling and pretending, which again, I don't want to say, I wanted to say that from a standpoint of having us really understand what's happening when you're doing that. But I don't want to, we're not going to beat up on the women when we're doing that, because it's often taught. Women are taught, you're taught as a little girl that you should not be upset. You should not be frustrated. You should be smiling. Women should always show up this like happy and gleeful and nice all the time. And so it's conditioning.
Yeah.
But this is where we get to unlearn the conditioning. This is not okay.
Reclaim our power. Yes.
Reclaim our power, and to be able to say, this is, it doesn't mean that I need to lash out, but certainly to be honest.
Yeah.
And to say, this is how I'm feeling. We get to learn, and it's a muscle. It's going to take some practice. Yeah. It's going to take practice.
Why does this sex conversation, what does this have to do with being a whole life death doula? I just want to explain that a bit. And, okay. as a single person who is celibate, one of my thoughts is, girl, I hope that one day I'm in a relationship, because at some point, none of this is going to work anymore, right? It's going to come to an end. And I might still be walking around, still doing my splits, but
girl, you was coming up with them splits. I was like, oh my God, I gotta talk to John. I gotta learn how to do those splits.
But at some point, none of this is going to work anymore. At some point, intimacy will be all you have.
Okay.
So, and that's a death. Like, there are parts of your body that will not function in the same way. And when it doesn't, you got to deal with that physical death.
Mm-hmm.
You got to grieve. You're going to deal with that emotionally. Yeah. And so I guess the whole point of Best Life of Wellbeing is, while you can enjoy your life, do it as educated as possible, as informed as possible, as vulnerable as possible. Be present, because at some point we all will die.
It's gonna be over.
Right. And it even if your physical body isn't being laid to rest, there are aspects through every phase of life where things are going to change. Things are going to die off. And so as we go through life, just being mindful of the fact that one day this is all going to be over, or the way we're doing it now, it won't exist anymore. Not losing sight of that. And so as a whole life death doula, I just want people to focus on their whole life by embracing their end of life. And so you mentioned partners, and you mentioned your husband.
Yeah.
And you are a widow.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I don't even know how to start this conversation, but how long were you married?
Well, we were together for 10 years. And we were together for 10 years. And so at some point very early in the relationship, he proposed and was like, I want to be with you forever. We never legally married, but we actually committed to each other, and we operated like we introduced each other as, this is my husband, this is my wife. And I believe in terms of how we committed to each other that we were married.
That goes back to my statement about how life can change. So you're a married woman. This man proposed to you saying, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. And now you're living your life without him.
Yes.
And so that, again, is why people, you never know when your time is going to be up.
You don't. And I mean, I think that, I think for some of us that actually, depending on how, for me, I never imagined that he could not be here.
Yeah.
Even when he was sick and in the hospital, it was that he's going to be, I just, for me, felt like for the rest of my life. He's going to be a part of my life.
Yeah.
And we're not always prepared for death and how that's going to change your entire world.
Right.
And I was very much like shutting that off, like not even open to the idea. So much so that I had two dreams that he was going to pass, but I didn't know that that was what those dreams were. So I used to have that level of feeling. So I didn't allow myself to even be open to the idea that he might not make it.
You know, that's how we are in life with regarding death.
Mm-hmm.
We go through life and we get older, but we still don't think, oh, I might have more years behind me than ahead of me. Or we might
Right.
think that thought, but then we just go on living our lives, right? Trying to live, and never accepting that no,
Not accepting.
the egg, the ending is the same for all. And we got to accept that that is how it's going to end. We are rejecting that till the very end.
To the very end. And not coming to terms with and being okay with. And somehow
Right.
we do see that as like that's that we're wrong for doing that. We do ourselves a huge disservice from not being able to come to terms.
Yeah. And one of my roles is to normalize death conversation.
Yes.
And it's so important. It
It
actually,
really is.
if you think about how you want to die, it can help you determine how you want to live.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so I want to help people with that. But I want to ask you, so because you weren't legally married and when your husband did pass away, how did not being legally married impact?
Girl,
Yeah, I
it
mean,
was a hot mess. That was again because of choosing not to come to terms with the fact that he could pass. And he was very ill. And he had congestive heart failure. And I was watching him. I was taking care of him in the last, months up until we went to the hospital. And I even stayed with him. While he was in the hospital, I was in there sleeping in the bed next to him. And I don't know how they let me. I was like sleeping right in the bed, or if they have one of the chairs that can recline. I used to be in one of the reclining chairs, but sometimes I'm in there right next to him in the bed sleep. I think, did he ask me? I think I may have asked myself, what are you going to do if he's not here?
yeah.
And I was like, I don't care about life if he's not here. So therefore, I refuse to prepare for life with him not being here. I just said, I don't, it felt like it would be wrong to prepare for him not being here. And so I just refused. Now, I didn't realize that, of course, that means that you are still going to be here. So how is life going to be hard given that he's not here anymore? And we were self-employed. We had our own business. And so I walked away from our business after he passed. It really required, I really lost I didn't just lose him, I lost everything.
Yeah.
I lost my entire life. But even with that, it did send me into, I think, the grief that I had to experience, of course, with him passing. I didn't really have, I was grieving and also in a space of not knowing how I was going to care for myself while I'm needing to grieve. At the time, again, I didn't care about any of that because I was like, I don't care about life. He's not here.
Yeah.
I wasn't suicidal, but I was no longer interested in it. Not at all. Nothing about it. Not a thing. And I would say to God often, we had conversations, and I would say, we're done. Like what he and I came to do, because he was also a healer. So we had our own business where we coached and supported people in living their best lives. And so I'm like, and we did transformational work, helping people take a look at what's working, what's not working. We came, we saw, we conquered, we helped people change their lives. Our work here is done. And then God's like, well, can you trust me that there's more? Yeah. I'm like, okay, so I hear you saying there's more. I don't know how, at that time I couldn't have, of course, a sight to see the idea. I felt like this was us at our this was the peak for me. And from here, it's all downhill.
So, and that is so understandable. Do you think not that your grief would have been easier, but do you believe that if you had an end of life plan and had some idea of, before he died, no, this isn't my house. And so if you were to die, this is my plan for where I would live. And this is, I don't know if you were the beneficiary on insurance and if
no, there was no insurance.
Oh my gosh. And so again,
there was nothing.
I guess, so that this is an easy question then. Do you believe that if you had an end of life plan, life would have been better, more manageable?
Yeah, definitely.
And then you're grieving, you would have been able to focus on just that rather than everything else that kind of had to be dealt with.
If I had been able to do that, then it's almost like being re-traumatized or being traumatized. So in addition to grieving, I was also being traumatized. And so I called my community. We did have a very strong community of people and people that I was surrounded by that love me. And I was like, okay, I need to move from here because I can't do this anymore. And in that same day, they came and packed me up and I moved out. I moved all the way out and had a good girlfriend's house to go to. So I did have some place to go, but it wasn't a plan. So it wasn't something where I had this plan to go.
So that brings me back to the receiving and the giving. Mm-hmm. And so there are many women, and I don't know statistics. You asked me a very great question. I have this statistic that the average age a wife becomes a widow is 59. And you suggested to me, what is the average age of an African-American woman becoming a widow? And I've done some research and I can't find that statistic anywhere.
Wow.
But I imagine the age is less than 59 years old.
I can imagine.
And if many of us are not thinking about caring for ourselves and normalizing that type of conversation with our partner. So your partner has to have a plan for his life. You have to have a plan for your life. And then you have to have a plan together, not just your life, but your end of life.
Yeah.
And, and so many of us women, we again are not really thinking about ourselves. We're giving and giving and giving and giving. And then, and so
I was in denial.
Yeah. And so that's one of my missions, is to get women to thinking about their end of life planning. And again, having those conversations with our spouse. And because we both got to know, we both got to be responsible for taking care of the other person.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And at one point when he was in the hospital, I said, what's going to happen? And he said, don't worry about it. I told my family what I like to have happen. So I already told them, what I want. And I said, they don't respect you now. What makes you think they're going to respect what you say when you ain't here? And he was like, it's going to be okay.
For the people listening, the end of life plan is not just verbally communicating, but it's also putting your wishes in writing.
Right.
And the verbal communication isn't just, okay, on May 28th, we're going to have this conversation and then never again.
Right.
No, it's a regular conversation. Some people say do it annually. For me, we're talking about it all the time.
Right.
And, whether that be monthly, whether that be as often as I think about my own mortality, it has to be, you got to convince yourself even, this is my end of life plan. This is what I want to happen. And it could easily change.
The whole thing, the whole ritual, a lot of the rituals that we have after somebody passes is not always as supportive as they could be.
And it's not supportive of helping us to accept death as a part of life.
As a natural part of life. Yeah. Like I said, I was complete. And me and God were fighting for a while about me still being like, what else do you want from me? I'm done. I served. I did what I was supposed to do. And then it wasn't until I went to live with my sister to help her take care of, well, I went down to help her take care of her baby and then wound up living there. And the baby brought me back. So she, like, watching her
That's so beautiful.
made me want to live again.
So that's so amazing because death and life are so connected, right? That is
Yeah.
so beautiful that the baby brought you back.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because I don't know if you know that I'm a birth doula. Are you
No,
aware of that? Yeah. Oh
no.
yeah. I've delivered dozens of babies.
But girl, this
So
goes
yeah,
back to the beginning of the conversation when you were talking about all these. I don't
all
know
these
how to do
hats.
the bio because it's so much.
Right.
I get
It's so
it.
much. Yeah. So I've delivered dozens of babies. I was going down there to help her have the baby. So that was whole idea. I was coming as a birth doula to help
Okay.
her deliver. And I recognized that when I moved into the lane of sexologists, it's like it's the same highway, just a different lane. So
Yeah.
still helping with reproduction. Um, and um, so I also, yeah, that's not lost on me. And I've actually helped people make a transition. So I'm aware that, in terms of who I am on the planet, I'm kind of present sometimes when people are coming and when people are leaving. So I've done both. I've actually done both. I've just not done it as a death doula in the sense of being trained to do so, but I have been very present for people who are leaving and supporting them in making that transition and being okay.
So I want to say that we've been talking a long time. This has been a
We
very great
have.
conversation. Thank you so much. I've
Yes,
learned
you're
so much
welcome.
about you and I am very impressed. And so one of the reasons for this podcast is to highlight people I see who are living their best life of well-being. And as we talked about, well-being is a holistic way of living your life. It's not a one-dimensional way of living life. It's really being content, even though everything isn't going exactly the way you want it to go. It's being trusting, even though you can't see what the next step should or being resilient when you don't want to go on. You've expressed all of that in this conversation. And that's what I want to encourage people through the people I'm in the people I am graced to meet and be around. The purpose of this is to share that you can live your best life of well-being. And the way you do that is not, vacations are great,
Yes, right, right.
and necessary. It's a form of self-care. But if you are not able to tap into that inner spirit, that I call it your inner coach, it is there to help you, it is there to guide you, and it's not going to force itself on you, but it is always there. And if you do not take the time to tap into that inner coach, overcoming, being resilient, understanding what life and death are all about, it's harder for that to happen. And so
Yeah.
I like people to see real life examples of
Oh,
people women particularly, who have endured struggle and who have come out on the other side stronger and wiser and with a willingness to create community and help to empower others. So thank you for being here today.
thank you. Well, I'm excited. Thank you. I'm honored to come and share my story. And I would just love it if it supported anybody. Yeah, this is just me step by step.
Living your
Trying
best
to
life. Yeah,
trying to okay, what do we need to do now?
right.
And trying to learn how to listen to what's next.
As we wrap up, can you share with people how they can find you if they're interested in a sexologist, shaman, Reiki master, birthing doula? How can they find you and learn all about what you offer to help them on their well-being progress?
Yes, thank you. So I am on most social media. I have my Instagram is Cocktails with a Sexologist, which is one of my brands where I will have a gathering, get together, you and a group of your friends, and I'll come in and talk about sex. So we'll pick a topic and see what it is that you want to learn about so that we are all more empowered for it. You can find me there. You can also find us at grownazzwomenshyt, and that's ass with two Z's and shit with a Y. And so we're also on Instagram as well. And And actually, people can dial my business line 202-630-2362. So you can reach me on any of those. And I would love, love, love to see how I can be of support.